Hurricane Katrina. No other storm in American history had quite the same impact on the nation. While Katrina may be the foremost American natural disaster of the 21st century, another historic storm made landfall on U.S. soil less than 10 years ago that would claim more than twice as many lives. It, however, has been seemingly overlooked. For Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria changed everything.
The National Weather Service in San Juan has issued an extreme wind warning. Doppler radar indicated extreme winds associated with the eye wall of major Hurricane Maria is quickly approaching peaks from the south. This is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation.
September 16th, 2017. The Atlantic Ocean. A tropical wave off of the West African coast had fostered an organizing complex of thunderstorms for several days now. The National Hurricane Center's watchful eyes pronounced this organizing system as Tropical Depression 15. Located 700 miles east of Barbados, warm surface sea temperatures and low wind shear promoted continued organization. 6 hours into the life of TD-15, the promotion to Tropical Storm Maria was warranted. The NHC began forecasting outward for the next 5 days. A landfall in Puerto Rico seemed likely, but it was too early to guarantee. Long shifts for forecasters would be required over the coming days, meaning limited time for adequate meal prep. Thankfully, there's today's video sponsor, Factor. As someone that spends long days editing videos while also trying to balance exercise and relationships, good meal prep is often what falls by the wayside for me. I've never been the most skilled when it comes to cooking, so Factor has been a welcomed addition to my daily routine. Clean eating has never been easier for me as they've just introduced their healthiest menu yet with plenty of options. I've been crushing their Protein Plus meals on long edit days, a menu that they just doubled the options for. My personal favorite thus far is the cavatappi and meatballs. I'm a sucker for a classic Italian dish. It's as simple as heating up the meals and having great tasting food minutes later. No more guesswork for portion control, and the meals come fresh, never frozen. No refined seed oils, no refined sugars, just real food from Factor. If you too want to simplify your meal routine, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code JUNE1STFB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's JUNE1STFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back into it. Maria steamed westward towards the Lesser Antilles, where oceanic and atmospheric conditions grew more favorable for rapid intensification. Maria exploded from a Category 1 to a Category 5 within an 18-hour window, making it the most extreme rapid intensification observed since Hurricane Wilma in 2005. All the while, the monstrous hurricane had the island nation of Dominica squarely in its crosshairs. Weather on the island deteriorated on the evening of September 18th, and by 9:15 p.m. local time, Maria had made landfall at Category 5 strength, subjecting the eastward side of the island to 165 mph sustained winds. An estimated 9-foot storm surge consumed coastal communities with nearly 2 feet of rain falling on the island. Meanwhile, the NHC had to look upstream for what would be next in the path. The Caribbean Sea offered the perfect intensification environment, with the U.S. Virgin Island of St. Croix and Puerto Rico looking like near guaranteed landfall locations. Hurricane warnings were issued for the territories. Maria departed Dominica to the northwest, leaving the small island nation with the greatest disaster they had ever seen. Despite the land interaction weakening the storm to a Category 4 briefly, Category 5 status would be earned once again. Throughout the 19th, meteorologists monitored Maria, which was now guaranteed to make landfall as a major hurricane in Puerto Rico. Shortly before midnight on the 19th, Maria achieved peak intensity at a pressure of 908 millibars. Sustained winds in the eye wall were 170 miles per hour. Despite the advanced warnings, the island was not remotely prepared for what was about to come. Just 2 weeks prior, Puerto Rico suffered a glancing blow from Category 5 Hurricane Irma. While not a direct landfall, approximately 80,000 were still without power upon the arrival of Maria. Even before Irma, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority was on thin ice. Aging infrastructure, mounting debt, and depleted workforce made for minimal prep work. Puerto Rico hunkered down as Maria closed in. To complicate matters, Maria began an eye wall replacement cycle shortly before landfall. The eye wall is a ring of intense thunderstorms that surrounds the hurricane's calm eye. This most intense part of the storm is a careful balance of forces. In major hurricanes, strong development causes a new ring of thunderstorms to form an outer eye wall, which will close in and cut off the inner one, shifting the distribution of the hurricane's forces. While peak intensity weakens during replacement, the hurricane-force wind field greatly expands. Puerto Rico would now be subjected to a massive area of hurricane-force winds. The effects of this expanded wind field are felt even before landfall. At 5:50 a.m. local, the island's NEXRAD radar site goes offline, leaving a ghostly final scan of the storm. The radome and antenna were consumed by observed winds of 145 miles per hour. At 6:15 a.m. local time, Hurricane Maria officially makes landfall in Yabucoa, Puerto Rico as a Category 4 storm. Core winds sustained 155 miles per hour, driving the complete collapse of the island's electrical grid. Storm surge on the eastern coast of the island was also widespread, peaking 9 feet above tidal norms. Extremely heavy rain was continually falling over the mountainous interior of the island. Quickly, rivers were overwhelmed by the volume of rain as flash flooding rampantly consumed watersheds. Among the bodies of water that quickly became overgorged was La Plata Lake. To avoid a complete dam collapse, floodgates had to be released. The town of Toa Baja downstream would see water rise several feet in a 30-minute window, trapping 2,000 residents. Rain continued to dump on the terrain, with a gauge in Caguas logging 38 inches of precipitation. Flash flooding became catastrophic for some watersheds, as entire bridges were wiped out alongside rural riverside communities. Maria expended much of its energy upon landfall with Puerto Rico. The night of the 20th saw the hurricane depart to the west-northwest at Category 2 strength. Back in the island nation of Dominica, the scale of disaster was just beginning to be fully realized. 98% of structures on the island sustained some form of damage, with communities on the eastern side of the island effectively wiped out. All 53 of the nation's medical facilities were compromised, with their largest hospital among the most damaged. Even the country's 2 primary airports were almost unusable, barely able to take on emergency relief flights. The entire agricultural yield was a complete loss, their main economic driver. Damage and loss estimates for Dominica were valued at over 200% of the nation's yearly GDP. The rest of Maria's life was fortunately rather uneventful. It re-strengthened to a Category 3 east of the Dominican Republic and continued to shift northwards. Surface sea temperatures had yet to recover from the earlier Hurricane Jose the week prior. Mid-latitude westerlies sheared the storm eastward out to sea, where it would become further downgraded from a Category 1 to tropical storm to an extratropical cyclone. Maria would cease to exist come October 2nd. All the while, the situation in Puerto Rico was bleak. All 3.2 million people were without power, and critical tap water infrastructure was offline for well over half the population. Flash flooding effects rippled for days after the storm, the most notable case being the discovery of the Guajataca Dam being damaged, resulting in a flash flood emergency and evacuation of some 10,000 residents downstream. Unlike landfalling major hurricanes in the continental U.S., Puerto Rico's isolation proved to be a logistical nightmare for relief efforts. Upon declaration of Puerto Rico as a federal disaster zone, FEMA began operating relief flights into Marin International Airport. By the 24th, USS Kearsarge, Oak Hill, and Comfort deployed to further relief efforts. Despite the mobilization of units and supplies, communication breakdowns, truck driver shortages, and infrastructure failures resulted in extreme delays moving relief to the interior of the island. Even 2 weeks post-landfall, Only 11% of residents had power, and half had water service. This now resulted in lives being claimed post-storm, as disease and other health measures physically couldn't be addressed. A humanitarian crisis was now unfolding on the island. The territory's economic sectors were also in no better shape, particularly their agricultural, medical device, and pharmaceutical industries. While this all unfolded, something far more disturbing was starting to be uncovered in the aftermath. On October 3rd, the Puerto Rican government had placed the official toll from the storm at 16 fatalities. This seemed very unlikely to many given the scale of disaster observed. Investigative journalists compiled funeral home records from across the territory placed a figure around 500, despite the latest government figure being at 64 by November. The counting of the deceased spiraled into political contention within both the United States and Puerto Rican governments. Puerto Rico's Governor Ricardo Rosselló commissioned researchers at George Washington University to study the records and evidence. Their report would be published in August 2018, placing the count at a staggering 2,975. The root cause for the egregious discrepancy came down to the lack of training and awareness when it comes to how to fill out death certificates in natural disasters, never being reported to their respective agencies. Also included in the report were strong criticisms of the Puerto Rican hurricane response plans, which were outdated and were likely only capable of responding to a Category 1 landfall. The official fatality figure was then corrected, making Hurricane Maria the deadliest U.S. landfalling hurricane of the 21st century and third in the nation's history. Across all affected areas from the hurricane, Maria's final toll was 3,059 fatalities, with economic damages totaling to $92 billion, the fourth costliest tropical cyclone on record. For both Puerto Rico and Dominica, recovery from Maria is still ongoing 8 years later. In the case of Dominica, its tourism industry is not like its surrounding island neighbors, making economic bounce back extremely difficult. The much more populated Puerto Rico faces similar issues, particularly their infrastructure. The already weakened state of the island's electrical and water systems before Maria meant rebuilding these from the ground up. Close calls with other large hurricanes since have still caused major outages on the island, proving the work is still far from finished. Since Maria, nearly $29 billion of emergency relief has gone into permanent work for the island's infrastructure. Maria was a defining storm in Caribbean history. Like many natural disasters that do not impact the mainland United States, they quickly fall out of public view. Despite Katrina-like qualities in both scale of disaster and tumultuous relief response from the federal government, Hurricane Maria's legacy seemingly lacks the same weight. Regardless, there is no question that Maria was a historic storm with drastic consequences for Puerto Rico and Dominica, consequences that are still raw 8 years later.